our special guest, Brian, who's usually with us. He's like our referred to him as like the Green Ranger of our Power Ranger group. You know, sometimes he's there, sometimes he's not, but it's always a welcome present. We bring a presentation on Superman. We are a Superman-based podcast for all things DC from Ohio. I do have sound, and usually when I do these, they provide microphones, and I just hook the microphone up for sound. It looks like they didn't do that, so I make the best of what I can. But we are bringing this presentation. We had originally supposed to be here in the fall, but we had car problems that we weren't going to make it, so they invited us to come back and do this. This was originally part of my 85-year celebration that I've retweaked a little bit, and we're going to get started. So let's get started. Maybe it doesn't want to work. All right, I'm going to go through my hard ones. In 1938, the Superman first was created for National Comics out, but it hadn't been what was classified as a superhero. What we had is we had the Pulse. Is there anyone tell me what the Pulse are? Anybody? Right. We had Doc Savage, Zorro, and others. I don't remember all of them off the top of my head. The Phantom. So these were the characters that were in the collective consciousness at the time. And what two boys from Cleveland, Ohio, right there, shout out to Ohio, Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster created was what would go on to become the very first comic book. Let's see if this works. We're getting there. Okay. Let's see how this goes. Superman was developed in 1933 by two Jewish high school students. Superman was really based on Hercules and Moses. It would be the champion of the social justice during the Great Depression. Superman would fight corruption as he rebuilt Metropolis with the catalyst of Franklin Roosevelt's ideals. This we have Jerry Siegel up here, and then that's me at Jerry Siegel's house. If you ever get a chance to see it, it's a beautiful monument in a really bad neighborhood. Sadly, you know, there's another picture I have of me and the kids, but literally my wife pulls up, she's like, jump out, let's go. And then, this is Joe Shuster, who's James' best friend. Sadly, the Schuster apartment had burnt down, but on the site, they built this wall to honor where he was. And it's a couple streets over from where Jerry Siegel is. Now, Joe was the artist, and Joe had problems with his eyesight. And Jerry was the writer. And then, this is just to highlight some of the things that were in Cleveland. A couple years ago, they had a huge exhibit at the Cleveland Library. And if you look, you go to the Cleveland Library and you look across, the building across, I'm not sure what the building is, but when you look at it, you'll understand that's what it is. That was the inspiration. They used to meet at the library a lot to do their stories. There is currently a movement from the Siegel and Schuster Society to have a large statue built in Cleveland to honor them. Yes?
I think they got all these tools now.
Yes.
They're aiming for March to Mechanical Cleveland.
He knows what's up.
I was in Cleveland.
Were you?
Yeah, Mechanical.
I wanted to be there last year, but sometimes work is. So, June of 1938, we have Action Comics #1, which comes out, which changes the world. Because this is the first dawn of the superhero. Now, let's get into the 40s. This is where we get our first taste of Superman outside of comics, which is the radio serials. And we have Bud Collyer here, who would be the voice of Superman for a very long time. Because not only would he do the radio show, he would then do the Fleischer cartoon series.
I know she was with you.
So that gives you an idea of the intro to the radio show. Now this is what I often call one of the forgotten Supermen. Ray Middleton was the first one who got in the costume for the 1940s World Fair. There are some on YouTube, if you look it up, there are some clips of the fair, and you see that Jerry and Joe were both there in attendance. But this is our first live action representation. Yes?
I thought it was 1939. Because I'm thinking there's, if we
Oh, is
count
it
here
here?
in 1939, there was a live action Superman every century.
I'm like, how much before he's fair? Because he's really wrong. Yeah. This is the Fleischer Superman that is probably my favorite character. Because I just remember having VHS tapes that still have of this character, exactly what VHS is. That's all that is. But how many have seen these? They're beautiful. Has anyone seen the Blu-ray re-release? Man, Brian back there. They're gorgeous. Like the transfers, they're pristine.
Yeah, pretty amazing. Fleischer's my first introduction to the character, watching the animation when I was a child. I think everybody was content to watch this.
I know, right? I'm just gonna sit and watch this. But that gives you an idea of that. Now, movie serials, if you don't know what those were, they would have short, almost episode-like, before a movie when you go to the movie theater. And they would cut, and each one would start with like a quick recap of the previous one, and then we leave you on a cliffhanger saying, come back next week to this theater to see the continuation. Kirk Allen, another one of like what I consider the forgotten Superman, because he often gets lost and overshadowed, was Superman in 2 sets of movie serials. 1948, which was just Superman, and then the sequel we'll get to. But I will tell you this, if you ever get a chance to watch these, do not binge them. They are not designed to be binged. You will spend so much time just going, oh, because they keep repeating. Like, so when one ends, the next one begins, and it recaps what you just saw, and then it starts, and it just, they do not work. Now, if you do ever want to watch them, which I recommend if you can, just to have that, like, hey, I've seen them, and Superman, just watch one a day. You know, just space them out. At the time, World War II was in full effect. We had comic books. Superman got his own title. And then we had what's called the dailies. Dailies were comic strips that would run in the newspaper. And it's really interesting. We did an episode where we compared Action Comics 1, Superman 1, the first couple of dailies, and then Superboy, how they all tell the same origin, but they tweak it just a little bit. There's little things though. Yes, sir.
I just found out the other day the Fleischer cartoons were Oscar nominated in animation.
Yes. If I remember the exact amount, I want to say it was almost like $1 million in that time period for the cartoon, because they did like a technique of rotoscoping, which I understand to a point, because like they used live action models and then drew over them. And technically there's 17 Fleischer, considered the Fleischer cartoons, but only about half of those were produced by Max Fleischer. And then they went on to another studio. And if you watch them all, it's Famous Studios.
Yes.
If you watch them all, you'll see you can feel it, because the production quality shifts a little, but the story shifts a little. Some of them are cultural and racially insensitive towards the last half because of World War II and such. So I definitely always recommend watching that front half that was produced by Fleischer Studios.
The animation's a little bit better there.
All right, the first series featuring Superboy began published in '49, which I was on another friend's podcast, and we were talking about this. It's so interesting because Superboy actually falls into being created in the golden age of comics, but most of what we know and we think of Superboy falls into the silver age. And actually, so much of what we know and think of as Superman's story, history, characters, can be contributed to Superboy. Fun fact, Superboy is where you get Lana, Pete, more of the Kents. Kents will get named. You also get the Phantom Zone and General Zod. All make their first appearances in Superboy comics before Superman. The 50s, we get Superman versus Atom Man, which is the second Kirk Alyn serial, which is the better of the two, and it's the first introduction of Lex Luthor, where he's just a businessman, scientist named Luthor, which I find fascinating because where we are in 1950, and we don't get that in the comics till the 50 comics were mostly drawn by Wayne Boring. Eventually, Kurt Swan would take over, and it's your barrel-chested Superman, very blue-collar weightlifter of the comics. But what I liked was the portrayal of the characters much different than what we would get as it's reflecting the times, the change post-World War II, where everything's kind of struggling with identity. Superman in the moment. Who's seen this? Yes. Great. So this was originally designed to be a pilot, backdoor pilot style for a TV series. They released it as a film, and Kirk Alyn actually turned down the role. He was approached first, and then George Reeves was cast, and we got Phyllis Coates as Lois Lane. Now what's interesting is if you watch this, it definitely feels like maybe this was supposed to be a continuation of what Kirk Alyn had done, because there's no origin, it's just kind of get dropped in adventure. Later, this would be cut up into a 2-part episode of the Adventures of Superman television series, and if you own the first season, it's there's the last 2 episodes of the first season.
Faster than a speeding bullet. More powerful than a locomotive. Able to leap tall buildings in a single bound. Up in the sky, it's a bird. It's a plane. It's Superman. Yes, it's Superman. A strange visitor from another planet who came to Earth with powers and abilities far beyond those of one.
So the first season was shot in black and white. Later, when they did the second season, some things changed. The tone shifted a little bit. It became less from the crime noir that it was in the first season to be a little bit more kid-friendly because Kellogg's was the sponsor. And there actually was a recast of Lois Lane where Noelle Neal, who had been in the Kirk Alyn serials, replaced Phyllis Coates as Lois Lane. The studio was smart enough that when they started doing this, they started shooting in color for the second season, but it wasn't knowing that not everyone would see it in color. But they made it that way so as people got color TVs, they would then be able to experience the show in color. So originally the seasons were being broadcast continually in black and white, even though they were shot in color as color TVs. Could you imagine a time without color TV? I can't remember a time without flat screen. Like, it's ridiculous. Okay? I mean, I don't know. But I think about like when I was a kid, like how we had like I literally on my first TV had the dial like in my room, and I'm just like now my kids are like, I got my Roku, Dad. I'm like, doing the hell. The 60s. Who has ever seen either of these? Yes, yes. So after the sad passing of George, we won't go down that rabbit hole. It's sad. In 1961, they made an Adventures of Superboy pilot that was never aired. It was developed
Johnny Rockwell?
with John Rockwell. Yep. It is a really, it's cool. Like I would have totally watched that show. Like it introduced the first live-action Lana Lang. It followed pretty true to the Superboy comics. It was a neat show, but it didn't get picked up. Then they decided, which was a horrible idea, that we're going to use the same sets and everything, costumes, but instead of people, we'll put people in costumes and call it Super Pup. So I watched it.
Why not?
I watched it one time. I'll never watch it again. And it's so unpreserved. The first half is like in color, and then all of a sudden it shifts to this grainy black and white. You can just tell like they were like, let's pretend this never happened. I wish this had never happened, but I wish this would have went to series. It would have been really cool to see. You might know this one? One of the other forgotten Supermen?
The greatest musical of our time.
Amen. It's a Bird. Now this is the Broadway version. It debuted in 1966. I bring up Broadway version because we will talk about something in a moment that is. But Bob Holiday played. Watch this. Check this. Please.
Put your hands like this, put a hand like that. One hand like this and say the 3 words.
How'd he do that?
That was so cool when I found this, just because,
Wires.
you know, Bob Holiday is often forgotten as being part of Superman's history and legacy. And this presentation is all about just the history of the character and the things he represents and what we know and some things we don't know. Bud Collyer did the New Adventures of Superman for Filmation Animation from 66 to 70. I just bought these on DVD. I've seen a couple of them, but Amazon had a sale. So I look forward to reviewing these down the line on the show. But here we go. Some of the Silver Age of comics is firstly birthed in the 60s. New villains would emerge, such as General Zod. We've all heard of General Zod. I'm gonna randomly point to people. Tell me your favorite Zod.
Definitely not Man of Steel.
All right. Hey, I'll say
Anything else?
Terrence Stamp.
All right.
I like the animation series back in the, with the Batman and the Justice League
Yeah.
back then. I don't know.
Be honest, there's no wrong answer. Okay. I like all versions. I actually really like Home and Salmon on Krypton because I felt like he was able to kind of bring in all the different versions we had seen and kind of pull them together nicely. 70s. Has anyone ever watched this besides me?
Yeah.
Hey, yes. So this was when they decided to take the musical, put it on TV for a TV special, but update it for the 70s. And then they decided we're going to broadcast it late at night because this is bad. Okay, and I'm going to tell you right now, it is bad. I watched it once, and that was good. David Wilson plays Superman. He's another one of the forgotten Supermen. And Leslie Ann Warren played Lois Lane, and she actually auditioned for the film. You can see the screen test for her for the film. And just, has anyone ever seen the documentary? It came out in 2006. It's a very plain Superman story. If you see that, there's a clip in this. That's all you need to see. Just enough to be like, woo! Keep going. We had great comics at this time with changing tone. This is like the 70s really had a new birth of writing because you would have people like Neil Adams, Dennis O'Neil come into play. We had legendary crossovers. I didn't go into the whole history, but there was legal issues between Schuster and DC Comics that had their names were removed. For years, Jerry Siegel worked for DC Comics under a pen name or wasn't listed as a writer. But at this point in time, their names were restored to the Superman books, and now from then going on forward, anytime you pick up a Superman book, it will say by Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster. The Super Friends comes out. This was a long-running show. And there's so many people that this was their first iteration of the characters because it ran for so long. Yes, you in the back.
Prior to Super Friends, there was a DC superhero show that had Hawkman and Atom and just little tiny things. You can find those on Amazon, but under DC superheroes.
This time frame, how there were Super Friends, and I guess I think I just saw someone say that they took Super Friends off Max, so I don't know if it's streaming right now or not. You guys seen this movie? Yeah. So In 78, Superman, the movie. That's important, okay? The movie, because that helps classify this. You don't understand what I'm saying in a minute. Is released with Christopher Reeve, no S, that was the other guy, as Superman. And the tag was, "You'll believe in anything fly." This is a great movie. Next year, I'm going to make that guy in the back who's reporting. We're going to record a commentary, but we're going to watch the 3-hour cut. The extended TV cut that is extended. And some of the scenes...
I thought we already did that.
Huh?
I thought we already did
No,
that.
we did the director's cut. The 80s.
I just work here.
Does anyone remember this show?
Yes, I do.
This series is the Ruby Spears produced Superman animated series that only got one season. It was actually really good. It was unique because it would start every episode was different, and then at the end it did this thing called like the chapter yearbook, and through every episode was like a little short story about Clark from an infant to a teenager. So like the first episode of it, you see him as a baby. It's all about how he like basically kept at this time the origin was the Kents took the baby to an orphanage, and then later they adopted him from the orphanage. And you saw the baby keep slipping out from the orphanage and going back to the Kents. And it was just really cute. It was really cool to watch. I watched these with my kids as we reviewed them. But it's often forgotten because it only ran for one season, and it was just this awkward time.
Very 80s animation.
Yes. It was interesting. It's actually the only piece of Superman media that features both Ursa and Feora together. And we have a whole conversation about how a lot of times people use those two characters interchangeably.
And it uses the John Williams theme.
It does.
And it has Lex Luthor buying the Great Wall of China.
It does. It's got some fun over the top adventures. But Crisis on Infinite Earths came in the 80s. Woo! We all know about Crisis. I'm still waiting for DC to produce Midlife Crisis. That's the book that I'm waiting for. We got John Byrne's Man of Steel reboot.
Heroes are parents now. We're getting close.
Exactly. I will never forgive Bendis for aging up John Kent, side story. Because the year that John Kent was born in the comics was the same year that my son was born. So I felt this like parallel between like, all right, Superman's now entering a phase of being a dad. I'm entering a phase of being a dad, so I'm reading these stories, and then they age him up to like 8. I'm like, okay, I can roll with this. Then all of a sudden, like, boom, he's a dog. And I'm like, dang you, Bendis.
Nerd.
But whatever happened to the Man of Tomorrow, which is like the end of the Golden Age Silver Age Superman story before we get to Crisis. Very pivotal story in the comics. Films. Superman 2 comes out in 81. Superman 3 comes out in 83. Superman 4 in 87. Now, we're going to take a vote. Who here prefers Superman 4 over Superman 3?
This guy.
What? Okay, who likes Superman 3? That's okay.
It's simultaneously the most comic book-ish Superman movie, but also the most mature.
My issues with Superman 3 is I feel like it was two films that kind of tried to force together because there's some great moments in Superman 3. And there's some moments that just make you scratch your head and be like, what is happening? But I grew up a lot watching this one because I swear to God it was on cable every single day. On like one of those like random weird channels, like WGNT 47, you know? Like I feel like every time
Middle of the day.
Yeah, every time I was at my grandparents' house, like I swear I turned on TV and this movie was on, so it just wasn't great.
I had it on DVD. I don't even know if it was the fourth movie when I was going on.
For the longest time, I didn't know Superman 1 and 2 were different films because I had them taped. And it was just like, it was taped from TV and I just thought it was one movie until I got older. And I bought it on DVD. I was like, wait, where's the rest of this movie? Who's seen this? Wow, more people seen this. That was good.
Not my choice.
This is rough. Okay, this is rough. We did a very fun commentary for New Year's Eve 2 years ago.
I believe it was 2 years ago.
So I got my wife, he got his girlfriend, and I'm not a drinker, okay? But we decided that we would drink some and watch this and the commentary. And my wife, like the whole time, is like, what is going on? Why is this happening? And then his girlfriend's like, I love this movie. I used to watch it. And we're like, okay. Nostalgia is a hell of a thing. This Superboy was a TV series. For the longest time, I would say comments like, yes, you remember that Superboy show? Like, you mean Smallville? No, I mean there was a Superboy show. I saw it on TV, I swear to God. Like, no. In 2006, when they released the first season of this on DVD, I was confirmed that it existed. But this was a series that was made a syndicated television series from 98 to 92. 88 to, I'm trying to hurry because I'm going to run out of time. Getting backwards. Yeah, my brain, dyslexia, the brain happens. October of 88 to May of 92. The first season featured John Newton as Superboy, and then the second, third, and fourth featured Gerard Christopher. Interesting fact, Gerard Christopher, when he started, was 30 years old when he played Superboy. My reading said 30. But he was older than Brandon Routh. And I think he's older. Yeah, Henry Cavill and Christopher Reeve, when they were Superman. And my ongoing joke is, when did Superboy wake up one day and declare himself Superman? It was on his 18th birthday. Like, he came downstairs like, Mom, I am now Superman today. And everyone's like, hey, it's Superboy. And he's like, no, it's Superman today. This was on Tubi, and then Tubi took it off, which is kind of a bummer, because we were going to start the third season, and they're, thank you. Thank you so much. My daily hero, right? But then I owned the first season. I found the first season at a library on sale for $1. I bought it and gave it to him, and then my boy Brian back there bought me 2, 3, and 4 for my birthday. So I am deep into season 4 right now. The 90s. Remember this show? Woo! Yeah. One of the best Lois Lanes. If nothing else from that show, anybody else wants to argue, that's cool, I get it. But you cannot argue that she wasn't a great Lois. I wrestled between her and Erica at different points in time. But this one, Lois and Clark, the new adventure Superman. Superboy was canceled, and this show was actually the first by DC. As Superboy wasn't exactly produced by DC, a lot of company background stuff. But what's interesting is Gerard Christopher actually auditioned for this. And then they realized that he had already done this. They're like, wait, you played this Superboy, that's the same that you're fired. And so, I overhauled.
This is not a continuation.
Yeah. And then comes the animated series from Bruce Timm, which ran from September 6th of 96 to February 12th, which is my birthday, of 2000. Tim Daly was the voice of Superman. We're going to do a Saturday morning special starting June 15th, where every Saturday we're going to live watch an episode from this and kind of just have people come on. It's like morning cereal with us.
Yeah, have coffee and watch Saturday morning cartoons.
We also saw video games as a first really big impact at this time. And just looking at this image makes me feel old. This was a good game. Yeah.
Superman 64, woo!
That was not a good game.
Superman 64 was not a good game. The Triangle Era, the death of Superman, and Electric Superman. That is a lot to take in one breath. The death of Superman, probably one of the most memorable comics of all time that still affects comics now. Electric Superman, things people forget. But we have love for it because of just a lot of things through this blue and red thing. 2000s. One of the greatest cartoons ever, I will stand by this. The Justice League launched November 17th of 01 to March 29th of 04. Justice League Unlimited then picked up and did July 31st of 04 to May 13th of 06. And George Newbern as Superman. I got to interview George Newbern a couple years ago. It was awesome because he is my favorite voice of Superman. And I say that, and this is what I told him when I was talking with him, is because he, through his career, he's done Superman's voice and everything, has delivered some of my most favorite lines. I have a video later that I actually talked to my son about it and used the same kind of lines, and I'll point it out when it shows up. It's from Superman, Shazam versus Black Adam, the short. Has anyone seen that? When he sits down with Billy Batson, he's talking about how being good is hard. I had that same conversation with my son dealing with bullies at school. And I told George that and stuff, and it was really cool that like he gets to deliver some of the best lines of Superman. Comics. We have Secret Origins by Jeff Johns. We have Infinite Crisis, All-Star, and Birthright. Here's a question.
Some of our biggest influences on our modern day stories.
Which do you prefer a story of Superman's origin for you comic readers? Birthright or Secret Origins? There's no wrong answer, okay? Just throw that out there.
John Burns.
What? In the back? I personally like the second half of this story and the first half of Birthright.
Why?
The first half of Birthright explores Clark traveling the world, how he finds who he is, and what leads to him becoming Superman. And this deals with like the Legion of Heroes, but the scale in Birthright gets huge. Like he's fighting like robots and stuff orchestrated by Lex Luthor and this whole coup to think that Krypton's invading Earth. But in Secret Origins, it's very small, very personal. The villain is Metallo and Parasite. So it brings the story a little closer to home. I think it's a really good first outing for the character. Superman Returns. Who loves this movie?
I love the story of how it was made.
I didn't expect that.
10 years, $200 million.
I have a love for this movie, and I know it has its flaws. And like even right now, I'm wearing the belt buckle for this movie because it's my favorite belt buckle of all time. But it was the first one I got to see in theaters at a time in my life where I needed this movie. So it'll always have a special place in my heart. My question is, do you consider it now, as of today, a sequel to what was done or a reboot and its own thing? Anybody? Comments? Yes, sir.
I view it more as a sequel because of the return part of it, because this whole like meta narrative of the studio just but also he is coming back to be Superman. The world has moved on without a Superman for a time, which implies that he had to have been there at some point, whereas a reboot implies this would be his first ever appearance.
You're not wrong. I mean, there's no right answer. I just
Maybe doesn't know.
After a while, I've come to think of Board as a standalone.
And that's kind of where my mind is gone, because one, we had Brandon come back from Crisis. So if you want to count that as continuity, I do, because I'm horrible about continuity. And then if you look at the Flash movie, we saw Chris and Helen Slater. Even though it's cringeworthy, I know, I saw that. It is what it is. We move on. We love, we laugh, we move on. But I think just because I feel like Brandon was pinholed in playing a version of the character that was not true to him. Like he should have been able to really get to do his own thing. So I've kind of started, and because of little inconsistencies, I feel like it's its own thing, but with what you said is completely true.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
That comic book man.
So, how can Superman get stabbed with a kryptonite blade and then fall and be done, but he can lift a whole continent made of kryptonite, sir?
I like to use this term called sunshine. You know, it's this thing in the sky. If you notice, in every good Superman story, he flies up and just stands in the sun, and then all's good.
Yeah, I don't buy it, sir.
Yeah, it's all good. So there we go. Suspension.
It was riddled with veins of kryptonite. It was not a kryptonite island.
He's focused that he needed.
Whatever you have to tell yourself, sir.
It is make-believe.
And he flew really hard. In 2001, we got Smallville. Any Smallville fans? Yeah.
Somebody says.
It's like the only comic book movie that drops you in sometime way in the middle of
Yeah.
the story. There is no origin. It's just way in the middle, and then you get further down the line when Brandon comes back for Crisis.
Yeah. They're like, hey, we're just gonna give you these vignettes. This is a TV series that I hold very true because Superman in this story is in high school at the same time I was in high school. And then the show ends where him and Lois are trying to get married shortly after I got married that same year. So it's just kind of like, it was in the background of like my high school, college, into, so like, it was just kind of part of everything.
You know, the half a dozen days Clark went to college.
Yeah, got his degree, got a job as a journalist. You know, he didn't really need college, that was the story. But then starting in 07, we've gotten a slew of animated movies. And they continue probably until Crisis 3 comes out, then we probably won't say anything more. That's a whole other conversation. But we've had great actors such as Adam Baldwin, Jerry O'Connell, Darren Chris, I spelled that wrong, I know. Matt Bomer have all voiced Superman in different iterations of the character. My favorite is actually the Death of Superman animated film, this one right here. I think it's just a well done movie. It's got a lot of heart to it. And if you haven't seen it, I highly recommend it. So, the adaptation of All Star is decent. We had a whole conversation about adapting things and how the book, where it differs and stuff like that. 2010's Justice League Action. Who watched this? Yes! This is my second favorite voice actor, Jason J. Lewis. It's not because I've interviewed him twice. It's just because I think he does an amazing job. I wish that they would get him to do some of those animated films, especially the Super Sons one. But we just did a whole rewatch of this, and I love this series. It just never got to take off. If anyone's asking, what is this? It was streaming, is it Hulu? Or did it leave Hulu?
It was, I believe it was on Hulu. We both own the digital run. And then the episode list doesn't match up.
Oh yeah.
Anywhere.
So here's something hilarious. So I pulled the episode list off IMDb, so we have descriptions. He bought his on Amazon. I bought mine from Apple. His order, my order, and IMDb's all different. So when we're like going through these numbers, he's like, "That's not the episode. What are we talking about?" And we're like, "Oh crap."
There actually is an app that you can download that is called Real Good. REELGOOD.
If you don't have it, you should. Because it basically you can put in every streamer that you subscribe to and type in something and it'll tell you where it's streaming. It is a lot.
Yeah, Justice League Action is a really good format. Very Teen Titans Go format. Short episodes, real quick, so you can watch them in quick bursts, 1, 2, 3 episodes at a time. And but it's slightly more mature, but it's nice seeing the big three mostly help out a younger generation of heroes coming up. You get to see a lot of Blue Beetle, Stargirl, Firestorm. Very interesting, very fun.
My kids are 7 and 9, and we just rewatched it, and they loved it. And it has good heart, good stories. and it also has a lot of cool meta stuff in there as well. All right, the comics at this time here. Rebirth happened in 2016. It's very convoluted. If you don't know, it's a good time, but I'm not going to explain it because it's comics and we don't have time. The Lois and Clark miniseries, written by Dan Jurgens, is when tells a side story about John growing up. We have the New 52, which we don't talk about too much, but we will next month. And then we have the Earth 1 series, started with a 3-book volume by J. Michael Straczynski. If you want to read a Superman comic that's more modern, but you don't want to read it a lot, check this out. It's really good. There's 3 volumes. They're just really good. Like, it's a modern way of telling the story, and I highly recommend it.
A lot less baggage.
Films. We had Man of Steel in June of 2013. We had BBS in 2016. We had Justice League in 2017. We had Henry Cavill as Superman. TV shows. I don't have enough time to like debate and go into that. Like, we could just do a whole panel on that. Supergirl launches in October of 2015 on CBS, where it stayed for 1 season before being moved to the CW and continued. Melissa Benoist is Kara Zor-El. That was my first time hearing Kara, which has been an ongoing debate that we have. Is it Kara? Is it Kara? Because, you know, or Kara from Smallville and the animated series. And then Tyler Hoechlin as Superman for the Supergirl show. This suit is horrible. So it's out there, this belt. Don't know what that is. Okay? Makes no sense.
It's like an Ush Kush Begush cape.
And then we have brand new Wrath Return in a more Kingdom Come traditional suit for Crisis during this time period in 2019. I love that suit. Video games. We have Injustice 1 and Injustice 2. I'm not a huge gamer, but I always like fighting games because I grew up playing a lot of Mortal Kombat, and plus, you don't have to have that much skill to handle the controller, just press buttons. I play this game a lot. My wife and I would argue, then we just start playing this game, that's how we fight. So we would just kind of yell at each other as we're fighting so that we were making, productive use of our energy. Instead of yelling at each other, we would yell at the TV. 2020 to now. Who has not watched this? This show is amazing. That's all I'm gonna say. Okay? It's a very vibrant retelling origin of Superman. I judge a lot of this type of stuff like off my children. Like, are they interested? Do they really like it? Or are they kind of watching it for dad? But when we started watching this last summer, both of them were like, "Hey Dad, it's Friday, you Superman." I'm like, "Yes it is, kids." I really love this show. The new season starts next week, May 25th. If you haven't, I highly recommend you watch it. It's one of the shows that it's family friendly, but it's not dumbed down. It's still a lot of good story that you yourself as an adult can enjoy. Little tweaks on the character, but a very true version of the character.
All very anime style, and some tweaks on different origins and uses of the characters. Also how they tie into each other, but it's a very well done show.
So we have had a ton of cool comics come out. We have the current Joshua Williamson Superman run, the Action Comic run, which we had a whole conversation about. Are there too many people part of this super family now? That's a lot of people, okay? Yeah, that's not even all of them. We've had John Kent got his own book, and then Superman vs. Mongol in the World Saga. And then in 2021, we got Justice League, the Zack Snyder edition with Henry Cavill. And then we had that really awkward, but yet cool scene at the end of Black Adam with Henry Cavill as Superman, which, was neat because I got to watch my daughter stand up and be like, "Superman!" Like, I'm winning her to my side. And then my son, my daughter loves the Flash. And I went to Walmart and had these really cool hoodies that were had the Flash symbol embossed on it down the arm. And then they had a Superman one, so I bought her and I bought one for my son. I come home and what do you think my son said? Anybody? Nope.
I want Batman.
He's like, "Do they have Batman, Dad?" I was like, "Who said it?" Good job. Yeah, he was like, "Do they have Batman?" I was like, "You get that." Super Pets came out in 2022 with John Krasinski as Superman. Who saw this and enjoyed it? Okay? To this day, my kids, when they watch that, when it does the juxtaposition cut of Krypto, the puppy yawning, then cuts right to Superman snoring, my kids are like, "That's Daddy!" Even in the theater, they called me out on it. I was like, "Okay." But I really enjoyed this movie. Anything that I can enjoy with my favorite character with my children is something to celebrate. It was a fun movie. I liked it a lot. It's got a lot of really cool meta references in it, and it was great. I wish it had done better. And now, in 2025, we are prepping for Superman. That's why earlier I stressed the whole Superman the movie part. Because now this is just Superman for 25 with David Cornsweet as Superman. What are your thoughts on this suit, just generally?
Red trunks, woo!
What are anybody's thoughts since we just got this first really awkward reveal shot?
Where's the yes? It's fine. I don't
It's-
think it has.
Yes, sir.
I think we should honestly reserve a little bit of judgment until we get a frame of him standing up.
See, I like this man's thinking right here. Because we had a whole conversation about it. That's what we did in our free time. Because if you don't know, men no longer have midlife crises, they just start podcasts. So yes, sir.
Kind of jumping off of that, the reserve judgment is we don't. One of the big bits is the red underwear bit and the belts, and you kind of see a belt, but everything else is kind of too much in shadow, so we don't know
what way they're going. Are they kind of going for like the Man of Steel and the other version with just the blue jumpsuit, or are we getting the red underwear? And if so, why?
In the green theme music.
Yes, it's like a Kingdom Come mashup with
Yeah.
the traditional. I don't really like that as
You have a question?
For me, it's not actually the uniform, it's how human he is putting on his suit.
See, I like that thought too. I thought about that, like, you know, there's been a lot of parodies of this, like with different stuff in the background and everything. But yeah, like the just slipping on my costume, getting dressed for work. As far as like the Kingdom Come symbol style, I have a love-hate with it. Because I love Kingdom Come, what that represents. But then I'm like, do I really want that transition here? I don't know. I don't know how to feel. So like you said, like I kind of reserve a lot of my thoughts. But I'm just happy that we're gonna get a new movie that's gonna continue.
Right.
And that they're gonna be filming in Ohio in June and July.
Right, maybe up over in Cleveland. Yeah, my thoughts on it is kind of the idea that it's less an S and more of a symbol, resembling the S. You know, like yeah, they're trying to be very human with him. It kind of seems with the like putting on the boots, but also maybe you know, that is an alien symbol. So kind of trying to embrace both of his alien and his human side.
Usually he's like putting on a suit like super speed. You only do C2.
Yeah. And this one, like he's like, lace it up the boots.
Superman and Lois. Show sadly has one more season coming in the fall at some point.
Thursdays at 8.
Yeah, Thursdays at 8. Yes, sir.
The costume's more improved though.
Yes, the costume that he wears in the third season is his best costume. It's a little bit thinner, belt's a little bit more, the boots are a little better. I love this show. We did a whole conversation about favorite Superman shows, and I voted this #1 for me. Because, I bet you guys can guess by now, this is a story about Superman being a dad with 2 kids. Though my 2 kids are much younger, it still, relates to me being a dad with 2 children. And I started, the rewatch of it I was doing, and I just really liked the angle that they, moving Superman. This is like, if you look at his whole journey in the timeline, this is like the farthest we've seen in live action, where he's married, his mom's passed away, and he has 2 kids that are teenagers, and he's continuing his life that way. Usually we always get dropped somewhere, in the middle or at the beginning. This is actually moved to a place that's new territory. Highly recommend you at least watch the pilot.
The first season has one of the best episodes.
Just gonna be a smart ass right now. I didn't know the show's been out for 20 years.
Yeah, I had my computer crash on me, and I had to rebuild everything quickly. My hard drive. No, you're good. And I was going through everything, trying to make sure I didn't miss anything, because my hard drive crashed, it locked up. That was an external, and I'm like, oh, crap, I have to redo everything. So I started putting everything back in, and things happen.
But I agree with you, definitely the best Superman show we've ever got.
And what I like about his portrayal in this show is the writers, what's the thing? They sat down, they took all the different versions, positive, and were kind of greatest hits, is what I call it. All these great elements from different eras of the character in different shows, and we're putting it together in one solid presentation. Now last year, the motto changed from Truth, Justice, the American Way to Truth, Justice, and a Better Tomorrow. And I personally like it. Because the American Way was tacked on from the radio show. As you know, you think World War II style, because it did perpetuate a certain time frame. James and I have a good friend who does a Superman podcast from Australia. We also have a friend in England who does a Superman podcast. And I feel like this just translates to the character representing the world more than just a one section. Superman is a lasting impact and symbol of hope, and that's part of why I love the character so much. In my field of work, I always will, I have a poster of Superman hanging in my office, one because I have different comic book stuff for when the kids come in.
But just to remind me to be hopeful, and that part of my job is fighting for justice for children. And have it. If it plays. Oh, now we get to the end. You don't want to.
Who are you? A friend. There's one thing I do miss, and that is you here for a reason. Here you go, friend.
Thanks. Cool costume.
Thanks. I'm on it. I just wish you could all see the earth the way that I see it. Because when you really look at it, it's just one room.
Let's see a stick.
It's not a mess. It's not my room, it's home.
Dreams lift us up and transform us into something better. On my soul, I'll never stop fighting.
I believe in second chances. I believe in redemption. But mostly, I believe in my friends. Telling the truth. You put the world above yourself. That's what a hero does.
You want to home like you? No one ever dreams about the problems, but everything has them. Even the extraordinary ones.
Look at the power of an idea to strive towards. The rest behind it.
You may have come from another world, but you will always belong to us.
85 That's basically the end of my presentation. This is the documentary I referenced. It's a great documentary. Just, you know, the whole history up to 2006. This book, I got to interview the author, if you ever have a chance. It's amazing. It's an oral history from the origins of a lot of the people that are in the book. He got to actually interview. Some he had to pull from old newspapers and stuff like that. But it's an amazing, very thick, we're talking thick book. I highly recommend it. By Edward Gross. Check that out if you're fascinated. Like, it's just, I find a lot of stuff like I don't know, like the past history was just very exciting. But that is all. I talk faster because we got started later. But this is us. You can find us on our podcast, all platforms if you're interested. I have a QR code right here you can scan and you can see all of our socials and everything. Anybody have any questions, comments, anything? Yes, ma'am.
Met a new friend yesterday, wearing the Superman 3-piece suit. I don't know if any of you saw him. He said, we're not going to get Henry Cavill back, but Henry Cavill as Red Sun, question mark?
That would be awesome. Like, it would be really interesting to explore. I think what would be amazing if they did like a live action anthology series, like a what if style. They would like do different, like, hey, what if we did this Superman live action? What would that look like? Or what if we did this? I think that'd be cool. Anybody else comments, questions?
Have you ever played any of the Lego Batman games as Superman?
I have tried, and I've played a little bit of Lego Bat, one of them.
First one doesn't have.
I don't remember which one I have. I don't know which one I have. Solomon plays it. My son plays it.
Speaking, it's 3.
I think it's 3. But yes, sir.
So, Superman Returns. My unpopular opinion is that's probably one of my favorite suits. To me, it's a mix of Christopher Reeves and what we got with Henry Cavill.
So with the Superman Returns suit, I love the belt. Always have. I love the blue bodysuit. I think the cape looks a little too rubber. If I get meticulous. I don't mind the smaller S.
I just like the fact that you darkened it up a little bit with a little bit of texture.
The texture
but not
makes
as
it-
quite as dark as what, you know,
Yeah.
Cavill's was. I like it.
I love the belt. I always have.
I mean, Brandon looks great as Superman. He definitely did, you know, that first reveal shot. I mean, besides some of the dark red and the cape looking heavy, I mean, I still think the reveal shot is him. He looks like Superman.
Next year we're gonna do a live rewatch of it.